People of Reddit, what is the oldest man-made thing you own? My dad has a stone chisel and axe head from near the Cahokia Mounds in Missouri that date back to 1090 to 1390 BC. I have an Act of Parliament from the English Rump Parliament that was printed in 1649, 10 months after the execution of Charles I, when England was a republic. I have an old Nazi bandolier for K98 clips. Has all the markings and everything, big belt buckle with the eagle and Swazi. My buddy found it in an abandoned garage. I own a pre-World War I Mauser. And my house is from the same era. World War I Captain's Sword. I have some really old editions of books from the 1800s. A Spanish revolver made in 1908 by the Baschke brothers that is a knockoff of a S&W. Several ancient Greek coins from 400 to 500 BCE. So they are about 2,500 years old. A Stone Age flint hand axe. I think you win. I inherited my grandfather's guitar. He got it as a teenager and was told to take care of it because it's very old. So nobody knows how old the guitar really is. I think at least 150 years. I love the thing so much because my grandfather was the most amazing person I ever knew. An Indian head penny dated 1897. My grandpa's Korean War bracelet or my former mill's original Singer sewing machine. Some pieces of amphory my father found in the Mediterranean in a sunken galley? In the 80s. So around 2000 yearish. I have a 100-plus-year-old brooch. It's a family heirloom. I've got a Ushumti from ancient Egypt. My mom used to work for an antiquities dealer. They had a bunch of them lying around, along with lots of other cool stuff. A spinning wheel. A first edition copy of Henry Boyd's translation of Dante's Divine Comedy. It's from 1802, and was the first full translation in English. I have a school book 5th grade reader from the late 1800s. I inherited a china cabinet made in the 1940s. I also inherited a non-working radio from the 1930s. I keep meaning to have it repaired. A fossilized ammonoidea. Probably about 100 million years of age. It says oldest man-made object. I'm at least 99% sure fossils aren't man-made. A bayonet from the 80s. I technically gave the blanket my mother sewed for me 3+ decades ago away to a 2-year-old, but it's still in the house. Grandfather's boning knife, blade made from an old saw blade, handle from bone. This isn't as old as some things on here, but my dad had an IBM flowcharting template from the 80s that he gave to me at one point, and that's the oldest thing I know of that I own. I still have mine. I'm 54 and have been developing software since I was 12. My house, built in 1837. I believe it is a cuckoo clock my great-great-grandfather got about 160 or 170 years ago. If we do have anything older, either my brain cells aren't functional right now or I have never heard of it. Mortar and pestle from 1706. I own a few 1941 wheat pennies. I have a Roman coin with Nero on it, supposedly from 64 AD if my memory is correct. It is only worth $15 or so, or at least that was what I saw similar coins selling for in like 2005. Apparently it's one of the most common ancient coins. A customized compact powder mirror that says Ruth on it. From the 1930s. A little Roman coin datable to about 330. A pedal sewing machine in near perfect working order and various things from World War II, not sure which is older. I have a letter written by my Civil War ancestor before his death in 1864 at age 30. Very poignant and I'm very honored to own it. So my family comes from a long line of English blacksmiths, so I own a sword from the 1400s. Probably a Roman coin from the 3rd century AD. I like to imagine how much wine and whores were bought with it over the years. Great-grandfather's sword he used in a war. I'd have to ask a family member which one. I think it's a book of newspaper pages we bought randomly at a bookstore while traveling. A lot of random stuff and ads from the 1800s. Silver coin from pre-Soviet Russia. I have an 1896 silver dollar. It's worn as hell but you can still read the date. I'd kiff it's handmade, but while walking in the woods I found an old collapsed building, all overgrown, and found a rusted sword with no handle. It was so badly rusted there was no normal metal left. Legit, it was completely rust. No idea how old, or where it came from. I have a wonderful Grateful Dead t-shirt that I bought in, like, 1996. Hems are looking kinda ragged, but otherwise it's in great condition, considering its age and how often I wear it. A set of first editions World War II book by Winston Churchill, published in 1948. I have a medieval thimble that a metal detectorist in the UK found. It is 13th to 14th century, or 700 to 600 years old. Nothing in Australia is old. Oldest country in the world, with no Bronze Age level civilization until relatively recently. Oldest country in the world. Come on now. Seems like there are stone artifacts like arrowheads going back thousands, maybe tens of thousands, of years in Australia. A cast iron train set from the 1900s. Was my great-grandfather's childhood toy. An old painting of Prospero and Ariel from The Tempest. I believe it's from the early 1800s. I was told it was cropped from a play advertisement. Beautiful oil painting on canvas. I have no idea who painted it or what it might be worth, but it's pretty cool. Money clip made of a $50 from 1890. I have 1903 spring seat rocker. My parents have a Chinese mirror from probably the 1200s. Oldest thing I have is a eagle pedestrian signal from about 1938. Quite a few Roman coins minted under the rule of Julian II. An antique bed that belonged to my great-great-grandfather. He was 6 inches tall. The bed was custom made to accommodate his height. A toy doll, it's made out of leaves, rocks, wheat and stuff. An indigo tapestry from about 3 generations of Japanese heritage. What do you mean by 3 generations of Japanese heritage? I wear a 200-year-old Chinese coin as a necklace, value maybe $5, but somewhere I have some low-value Roman coins that are 1500 plus years old. I have a farmer's almanac dated to 1860. I scooped it up at a stoop sale. I don't think it's worth much at all, basically a very old magazine. But I like it. Family Bible, with the ancestry and all that handwritten between the Old and New Testaments, from my great-grandfather. 1876. Bible is German, GGF centuries are in Sunderland, German script, but I recognize my grandmother's and my mother's handwriting in later entries. Need to translate the German entries before I hand it off to my kid. Also before the ink fades completely. My friends own a chest set that was made in Korea. So it's at least 80 years old. It's really cool, the pieces are hand carved and made of stone. Me. I'm a geezer. Had a 1926 Russian rifle. But my wife has a book from like 1870-ish. 100 or so years old statue of the god Tuapei Kong. It's one of my prized possessions and he sits comfortably on my altar with much newer god statues. Tuapei Kong can be considered as the Taoist patron god of Singapore and Chinese Malaysian/Singapore Chinese. My grandmother's quilts. 1930 or so. I have a copy of the works of Dryden published in 1701. I also have a coin from what appears to be 1787, the coin is quite badly worn, so it's hard to tell. I used to have an instruction book for an old Ford, somewhere in the 20s I believe. I don't know what's the oldest of several Victorian things: dresser, bed, chair, mechanical pencils, rug, dip pen nibs, the box I keep dip pen nibs in, etc. Gloves made for my great-great-great-grandma in the 1800s. Probably a British halfpenny from 1749, I found it encrusted inside a rock after it washed into me at the beach. Got a 10-shooter revolver, yes, you read that correctly, from the late 1800s. I have an ancient Greek coin from ca. 250 to 300 BC. A souvenir spoon from Great America when it was still Marriott's with the Warner Brothers theme. Lol, probably a t-shirt I own from 2008 I used to work out in. Oh wait, I bought a piece of the Berlin Wall at a gift shop, so probably that. I have an arrowhead I found that was made by Arapaho Indians about 1500 to 2000 years ago. My great-grandfather's watch, it was made in around the 1950s. A revolver from World War II. My great-great-uncle was a pilot, got shot down like 18 times, one of those crashes was in the ocean, so his weapons got soaked and rusted with salt water. He got new weapons, gave his old revolver to his brother, my great-grandfather, and he gave that to my dad, and we still shoot it once in a while today. My child. A hat from the 1930s that I found in a thrift shop. And my grandmom's dresser/nightstand from the 1950s. We own a wax stamp made of iron that predates World War II by about 20 years. It has a swastika on the side of it and prints our family seal in hot wax for envelopes. We are not Nazis, none of our family were Nazis, it wasn't designed by Nazis, and has nothing to do with Nazis. It's an interesting piece of family history. Me. Technically woman-made, but an English floor clock, made in 1760 by John Wignall. I don't own it right now, but I am planning on buying a Hitlerjugend knife, kinda expensive though. No, I'm not a Nazi, I just collect knives. When I was a little kid I found what I thought was a dinosaur bone in my grandparents' farm field. I thankfully kept it, and later realized that it is actually a Native American axe head, from around 8000 BC. Holy hit! That's amazing! 8000 BC? Jesus, that's old. A 5,000-year-old stone hand axe found in Sweden. I don't know where my grandfather got it, but he gave it to me. A toilet. It was invented in 1596. We all own one. Old-style hand drill, kind of like an egg beater. I still use it. Belonged to my grandfather who was born in 1897. My family's house was built when Texas was still in Mexico. A bookcase and a stool my great-great-grandpa made when he was in 7th grade. Over 100 years old. Bookcase was put together without any nails. Also, my family had a World War II Nazi helmet that we didn't feel comfortable owning, so we gave it to my uncle. A mining gas mask from the 1930s to 40s. 1857 Canadian halfpenny. It's from 10 years before Canada was an independent country. I'm a coin collector. I have a coin from Demerara that dates back to 1832. My apartment. It was built in the 1840s. A horseshoe that we found in the walls in said apartment when renovating. My great-great-grandfather obtained it from the Isonzo battles. A book that was printed in 1985 called The Mask to the Wizard. Really good and would suggest reading it. My father. He's man-made and he's old. An 1800-year-old Roman coin and an 800-year-old French coin. Up until a few days ago I owned a Germanic fire strike. Around 1,600 years old. Probably my 104-year-old grandpa's repeater, pre-World War I. A Ralph Lauren rugby jumper. It was a gift from my girlfriend who found it in a vintage clothes store in England. It was the first thing she ever got me and I'm in love with it. It's a little over twice my age. My Prussian parade saber from the 1800s. 1964 Bianchi Specialissima bike frame. I refuse to give it away because I've owned it since I was 14 and would love to restore it when I retire. Still have about 40 more years, hopefully, to go before I can start my project. Furniture my great-grandfather made for my grandmother's 16th birthday. Probably made in the late 40s, early 50s. Some of my bedroom furniture is older than me, at least 35 years old. 1893 Spanish Mauser.